Of course, this is going to be a session on AI. My name is Niko Szumilo. I'm an associate professor at UCL and the director of our real estate institute. Maybe 4 years ago, feels like 5 now, we started looking at the impact of AI on real estate, and there's a team within the institute looking at this, and that's me on the right-hand side. By the way, I am an economist by training, so in the morning you've had 2 perspectives on AI, one very positive and one very negative, but I think it was very clear that you should listen to economists because apparently they know what they talk about. I am an economist by training, and I am a professor of economics, so hey, apparently that gives me some credit and some ability to talk about AI, and that's exactly what I'm going to do today. The other 2 people are far smarter and far better at what they do than I am. On the right-hand side, you see my wife, Monica, who's also at UCL. She's a physicist and an AI engineer, and that's how I got interested in AI in the first place. And the person you see in the middle is Thomas Wiegelmann, who's an honorary professor at UCL, and not only he has a PhD and a great track record, but also he's been in the industry for 25 years, helping us understand really the impact of AI in practice. So, many of you have seen the headlines. Klarna, firing 700 people, replacing them with AI. UPS, pivoting to becoming a company that is essentially managed by AI middle managers, firing 20,000 people in the US. Cisco, reducing the workforce by about 7% and restructuring to essentially become an AI-focused company, AI infrastructure-based company. And then Duolingo, which is basically now pivoting to hiring people with AI skills. And that's what you see in the headlines. Terrifying, it feels like AI is taking over the world. Actually, when you look beyond the headlines, the picture is not quite as clear, because Klarna, yes, they fired 700 contractors, but at the same time they are now looking at hiring some of them back, not because it has failed, but because they've realized that AI plus a human gives the best quality and the highest efficiency. So no, it's not that AI has failed, it's just it feels like pairing AI with humans gives you the best results. UPS, yes, they are firing a lot of people, at the same time hiring a lot of AI scientists. Cisco, similar to UPS, firing a lot of people, hiring a lot of people with AI skills. And Duolingo at the bottom, I think, is a great way to summarize exactly what's going on. They say, look, AI can handle scale. It allows you to scale up much faster, but you still need humans for quality management and for managing relationships. So if you just read the headlines, it feels like, oh, it's AI revolution. But if you go beyond the headlines, it feels like it's a lot more complicated than that. And yes, AI is slowly making progress, but it's not quite as transformative as many would like you to believe just yet. The way I like to think about adopting AI is you can do it in 3 ways. So first, you can have the board of the company sitting down and saying that we have this specific problem, we need to use AI to solve it, and we need to start a project, invest some money. And an example of this could be, for example, Hilton. You know, many years ago, they've invested into using AI for revenue management. Long, slow, expensive project, and took them a long time. Increased revenue by between 5 and 8%, and since then everybody is now looking into revenue management. So a great example of top-down approach to deploying AI. There's also another way. You can partner with a startup. You can get the startup to solve very specific problems for you. For example, Maersk, the shipping giant from Denmark, they use AI to manage their negotiations. They had many different negotiations managed simultaneously across their portfolio by humans. Couldn't coordinate them because it's really hard to coordinate 200 negotiations if you're a human. They decided to outsource this to AI, and now at portfolio level they get better results. And finally, bottom up, which is basically everybody using AI to become more efficient. All ways of adopting AI are really interesting and worth looking into. I think, personally, bottom-up is going to be the most impactful, especially for us as individuals, because we can now become much more productive and do our job much faster. And as I will show you later, we can be happier doing our jobs. Anyway, before we get to the happy bit, these are industries that have already been disrupted severely. We already see decreasing employment in software development, coders of all seniority, legal researchers. If you speak to your lawyers, they will tell you that the work that used to require 200 junior lawyers now requires 50. Now, they're not all gone, but the demand is significantly lower. Graphic design and, in general, art and sort of graphic generation or photographic professions. If you are a headshot photographer, you are basically out of the job now, because you can upload a couple of pictures of yourself to ChatGPT and ask for a professional headshot. No point to waste time going to headshot photographer. Interestingly, with customer service, turns out that like the Klarna example, turns out that pairing humans with AI is the way to go, gives you the best quality, keeps customers happier because they get better service, keeps your workers happier and more effective because it reduces your turnover, and it allows you to retain the same staff, but also it makes junior people act like much more senior people much earlier. And that's in general what we observe through research, that pairing people with AI allows them to act like people with a lot more experience much faster. And now, of course, this effect provides diminishing returns the more senior you are. So if you allow somebody who's a senior executive to act as if they were a marginally more senior executive, the impact is going to be relatively small. But for juniors, for people who have just graduated, the impact is very significant. Again, I will come back to this point later on. 3 issues that people have been asking us about ever since we started this work. We've been drowning in questions about this: hallucinations, data security, and DCFs. Now, hallucinations are a feature of generative AI, not a bug. These models have been designed to work this way. The reason they sometimes give you gibberish is because they have been specifically designed to do that. This is what allows them to be so creative. This is what allows them to sometimes generate answers that are truly amazing. They are probabilistic rather than deterministic. If you ask the same question twice, you will get 2 different answers. They are supposed to work this way. I don't really have the time to explain why this happens, but trust me that this is a feature rather than a bug. And if you know how to manage this, and if you know how to work with models that do this, it is not a problem. The hallucination rates at the moment for the best models are lower than 1%, which is probably better than an average human. So when I speak of everything that I say, probably more than 1% is factually incorrect, not intentionally, it's just sometimes it's hard to always say things that are perfectly correct. And I'm an academic, I'm supposed to be really good at this. Then data security. I think at the beginning of the generative AI industry, it was struggling a little with data security. All of these problems have now been solved. There are spy agencies, there are security contractors, there are very secretive companies that develop drugs and protect their patents, deploying all of the major large language models internally, so ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude. It is absolutely possible to deploy this extremely securely, to the extent that you can have it running locally on your own servers without any risk of any data leakage other than your employees or colleagues breaching security protocols. And that's always going to be the weakest link. So the biggest issue with data security are humans rather than the design of AI, especially with the license that you can now get. The most common question we get in real estate is, can it do my DCFs? The short answer is, yes, it can, although I'm not sure you really, really want it to, because it will do it differently than what you have in your head, sometimes better, but you will not be able to really understand the value of it because you don't want your DCFs done well. You want the DCFs done exactly the way you want them. So there's going to be a little bit of a fight between you and AI about how those DCFs should be done. Very deep, complicated topic, so I'm not going to explain it in great detail. Instead, what I do want to tell you about is the advent of AI-led workflows. And unfortunately, those AI-led workflows have a really bad name, because the name has been coined by people, by software developers in San Francisco, and those workflows have been named vibe workflows. And again, I apologize for the name, not my fault, don't blame me for that. Essentially, this is now the name given to workflows where you say what you want and explain it to AI, and then AI builds it for you. And I will give you some examples of this in a minute, but essentially, the idea is that if you can articulate what you want, in many cases, AI will have the capability to do everything for you, and as long as you can validate the output in one way or another, you don't really need to understand what happens in the process. So think of hiring an intern who has skills you don't have, you ask them to do something, they build it for you, and you just look at the output. Either it works or it doesn't. You just move on if it works, and you end up using it. An example of this is a phenomenon called vibe coding. Right now, you can literally go to a website. There are different platforms that you can use for this. The two main ones are called Lovable and Replit. Essentially, what they will do is, if you can articulate what type of an app you want, it will write the app, deploy it from a single prompt. It will do everything for you. I will show you some examples of this in a minute, without you understanding any coding whatsoever. And we've tested this on our students, and the results are really amazing. So I will show you some examples of this in a minute, but of course that means that the software development community is now split into people that say, hey, vibe coding is amazing, because now you can develop a prototype in seconds, and you don't really need to understand how to code. And then there is another part of the community that says, hang on a minute, if you don't understand how to code, you should not code. And of course, you understand that, I presume people in this room would probably err on the side of caution and say, well, I probably don't want to code if I don't know what it does. And I think the split in the coding community shows that there is value in developing prototypes quickly, even if they're imperfect. But there's also, of course, a lot of value in maintenance, security, robustness. And that's something that AI may be good at, but you still want a human in charge of that. So, of course, this is what people have done for software development, but you can apply it to other areas as well. So I will give you now some examples of things that really specifically apply to real estate here. I was really interested in the question of, all that defense spending in Europe, how can real estate investment managers take advantage of it? And there are no experts in Europe that would be able to answer this question. So this is a question that in the past would take an analyst maybe a month of work to really get to grips with the question. Instead, in about 2 hours, I was able to get a bunch of AI agentic deep research agents look into this question. Different platforms, so ChatGPT, Gemini, Manus, and other types of applications produced one report each. I then asked a large language model called Claude to write a report unifying those models. Then I asked AI to create a presentation. I will show you the deck in a minute. And then you can use Notebook LM, which is free. So if you haven't used it already, please have a look, to make a podcast out of the report. Or you can use apps like Agent on Synthesia to make an avatar of yourself presenting the report. It looks really good. Apparently, apparently UBS is already sending videos of their analysts that are generated by AI, so basically AI avatar analysts to their clients. There's a question? The input is essentially this prompt, maybe with a couple of follow-up sentences.
So where's it drawing the data from?
The internet. So all of this, yes, all of this.
You're not putting the data, it's finding it from
No. It can, if you wanted to, you can connect your own data sources, you can upload files, you can, of course, but for this, I just wanted to do sort of internet research. And sort of what you get is a full report, 46 pages, executive report, PowerPoint slides, a podcast and a video. And if you're wondering really what it looks like, let me show you an app called Gamma. If you haven't used it already, I recommend you give it a go. I haven't done any formatting for this. I didn't write a single sentence of this presentation. And you can see here, you have a picture of an AI-generated tank, and it looks like at different asset classes, sort of related to the question, has reasonably good visualizations. It can be relatively creative. It does interactive visualizations. If you want this as a PowerPoint, you can, of course, download it as a PowerPoint. The content of the report and the formatting, all of it has been done by AI. Now, of course, at this point, most of you will be thinking, fine, it looks great. How good is it? So what I have done is I send it to heads of research in my network that sort of would normally do this for their companies, and I asked them, what did they think? And they all said, look, it's not perfect, but for the time you spend on this, 2 hours, it's very, very good, right? So lots of really good quality insights, lots of interesting points that they were able to follow up, very specific examples and recommendations. They all said it's a little light on specific deals, yields, and financial data, which is fair enough if you're just using data on the internet. Of course, the details are going to be, the deal level details are going to be relatively light. Formatting, I would say it's usable, right? You've seen the presentation, I would say it's usable. We were all concerned about hallucinations. None of us has been able to find any. Doesn't, of course, mean that they don't exist. It's just, if they exist, they're not as obvious that a team of maybe 7, 8 people would be able to find them. So I think that's relatively interesting. If you are interested in this, that we have a free webinar that basically takes you through the whole process that I recommend you look at. The next vibe type of a workflow I'd like to show you is valuation. And of course, there are different ways to get AI to do valuations for you. I think the most interesting one is when you take a PDF property brochure, you drag and drop it into an AI model. Let's take an example of something called Claude. I will show you an example of this in a minute. And you have a prompt resembling something that you see on the left-hand side of the screen. The idea of the prompt is you basically specify what you want and what the conditions are. Now, I've used this specific property. It's, I think, 89 to 91 Gresham Street. I don't know who owns it. I found this randomly on the internet, and I've been using this as an example of AI valuation. I hope the owners don't hate me, but I've generated some nice publicity for them, so hopefully it's more helpful than hurtful. But you enter the prompt, you let the model run, and without any follow-up prompts, essentially what you get is something akin to what you would get in Excel. So what you see on the right-hand side of your screen is basically a cash flow model when you can specify the assumptions, right? So all the usual things that you would specify, for example, in an Excel DCF. And then you see your key investment outcomes, you see the annual cash flow, you see some nice graphs that explain what's happening within the property. You get the code for it as well, and the code means that everything is completely auditable the same way it would be in Excel, except, of course, you need to know how to code. The point I'm trying to make is you can get different AI apps to go through the same process and essentially value the property based on the rent roll that it finds in the PDF brochure and all the specifications that you give it. You can do this for many different models, and shockingly, in my opinion, if you do this, so here you have ChatGPT 04, ChatGPT 03, and Gemini. I uploaded the same PDF brochure, I entered the same prompt, and it gave me valuations that were all within, say, $500,000 of each other. It gets better, because if you repeat the exercise at different points in time, these numbers change. Because the market conditions change, the assumptions that we put into the model will change as well. So essentially, if you really wanted to, you could have sort of weekly valuation of your assets. Now, of course, you should remember that this is only useful in a very limited way, but you can do it. And of course, I wouldn't necessarily trust evaluation that comes out of a single interaction with an AI model. I would probably do it using code 50 times, 100 times, take the mean and the standard deviation to understand exactly the confidence in the price. But I think we are very close to having an AI model where before you even start looking at the property closely, you run it through a model to understand, is this property in the ballpark of stuff that I'm interested in? And if AI says no, if AI says no, you just move on. It gets even better because the next Vibe workflow is data analysis. What we have done is we got a group of students that at the beginning of the class, they didn't know what a file path was or what a subfolder was. In 15 hours, we got them to do the things that you see on the screen. So run regressions, and that includes out-of-sample predictions, make maps from shapefiles, forecast using time series and machine learning models, and do risk analysis using Monte Carlo simulations. In the past, that's at least 3 months of teaching, and not all my students would be able to complete the training. It requires coding, it requires statistical analysis. Right now, we got students with 0 statistical background to do this in 15 hours. And I'm just marking that at the moment, and I'm blown away. Of course, they don't understand everything that they do, but I would say they do around 60 to 70% of what a person without a data science background would want to do in their job that is related to data science. Let me give you an example. So imagine that you work for CBRE or JLL, somebody providing comprehensive database real estate solutions, and then you have a client that says, look, I need you to give me an interactive dashboard on which I can select start and finish years and see a heat map of changes in prices at MSOA level. MSOA is a statistical geography in the UK. When I click on MSOA, the name of the MSOA should show along with the change in price for the selected period. Right, so imagine that this comes from a client. If you work for CBRE, you need someone to wrangle the data, somebody to make the maps, and somebody to deploy the dashboard. Or you could just add these instructions and send it to Replit, and it will do all of it in about 3 minutes. So you just say, look, you give AI the raw files that I downloaded from the internet, you upload them to the platform, you enter this prompt, and then the AI platform will do the analysis for you. So literally, I just uploaded the 2 files that I downloaded from the internet, entered the prompt, and hit enter. Let me show you the result that I got from this. In this case, it's just, is that 5 minutes left? I have far too many slides for 5 minutes, I'm afraid. Thank you, I appreciate that. So, well, no, that's your job. I'm just going to keep talking. So while this is loading, and it will take a minute to load, I just wanted to say that the idea here is that you can do a lot of very sophisticated data analysis with 0 AI skills. So you can see here that on the left-hand side, you can choose the years. And I'm, of course, going to go right to the interesting periods. I'm going to go to changes in prices between 2007 and 2010. And hopefully this map is going to update to a heat map of changes between 2007 to 2010. And again, I haven't done any coding for this. I haven't done any work. All I did was enter the prompt and then click deploy. And this is a website that you can send the link to your colleagues or your clients. And this is a permanently deployed website. So all of this is interactive. So you can look at different areas. You can click on them to try to understand, which areas have changed in price the most. The point, of course, I'm trying to make is it's all about prompting the right way. There is also a phenomenon called vibe strategy, because it turns out that if you get AI to answer strategic questions, not only it can outperform MBA students, increasingly it can also outperform human CEOs for making strategic decisions. It, of course, lacks the context, so it won't have all the information, but if you feed the information correctly, it can make very good strategic decisions, and that includes strategic decisions for operations as well as financial decisions. This is going to blow you away. There's a real estate strategy case study that Thomas and I have been teaching at different universities for a very long time. So maybe 6 years ago we wrote the case study. And this is what MSc students, this is the marks that we would give MSc students in one day at Harvard, right? That's the distribution of marks. So, you know, this many would get 80% or more, this many would get 75. This is what would happen at Cambridge and UCL. So relatively similar, right? So we get very similar performance. Maybe Cambridge and UCL are a little better just because we taught the case study later in the year. And then we gave this to, this year we gave it to UCL undergrads, basically, you know, first year undergrads, so basically school children, but gave them access to AI. And then we looked at the results. So the same case study, a lot less time. The undergrads have no idea what they're doing, no idea why the answers are so good, but they clearly outperform. And the point I'm trying to make is my students take it for granted. Take the fact that you can just deploy AI to solve these problems for granted. They, you know, the first instinct is, okay, what does AI say about this? And that's important. And then the last point I wanted to make today is is on AI training and implementation. I think, you know, I've spent 25 minutes question. Yes?
Can I ask a question on the previous slide? Isn't there a worry about when people will stop thinking then? Because this is a lot of, we produce a lot of information by using AI and we send it and we present it. But at which point do we expect consumers to stop thinking? Like when do we start thinking? Do we stop thinking?
I'm not worried about this at all, because that's the same argument people made when calculators came out. People said, you know, we shouldn't be using calculators because then we stop thinking. We just start thinking about other things.
But the calculator, to understand how to do the calculation, is just that you're slower than this. But with AI, there is a point where it outperforms humans significantly. This is where my worries will start.
Okay.
And I have a computer background, so I'm also...
When was the last time you multiplied, you know, like 5-digit numbers by each other, by hand, right? You say, honestly, I would have to think really hard the method that I learned at school to multiply very large numbers by each other. I just don't remember the procedure. I've forgotten how to do this. So yes, in theory, I know what a calculator does, but there's also a lot of stuff that the calculator can do that I have no idea how to do by hand or in my head. So yes, you're right. And my opinion is that we will just focus on thinking about things that AI can't do, and that's what we will focus our brain energy on. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my answer to your question. Speaking of things that are weird and slightly worrying, this slide should give you pause, because this is the rank of use cases of how people in the US use generative AI, how they've been using generative AI in 2024, and how they started using it in 2025. And I think number one, or the first 3 places in 2025 should give you pause, because I've been talking to you about how amazing AI is for work for about 25 minutes now, and it turns out that the way people actually use it is therapy, companionship, organizing their lives, and finding purpose. Blimey, finding purpose. I mean, look, this is data from the US, and you can, given what's going on in their country, you can excuse them for needing a little more therapy than in other countries. But I think these results generalize pretty well. But also, it turns out that, this is my favorite relatively recent study on AI, and this is from Procter & Gamble. They basically run an experiment where they had, oh no, the bells are coming. When they had different types of teams or pairs perform similar tasks. So they had human pairs, somebody from a research department and somebody from a business department, and they had those pairs use AI or not use AI, and then they had a research person plus AI, and then had a business person plus AI, and they were giving them all different tasks and looking at the performance. And you know what? Turns out human teams that used AI increased their performance. But if you were working alone, if you were working alone as in without access to another human, but you had access to AI, you would basically match the performance of a human and human pair. And that means two things. First, working with AI is increasing your efficiency, but also it's breaking down the sort of artificial silos of expertise. Because if you were a human from the research department and you were working with AI, you were working as efficiently as a person from a research department with a business person. So it now gives you the insights into another part of the business. But most importantly, I think in this research, it showed very clearly that teams and individuals working with AI was just happier doing their work, as in they enjoyed their work more. And I can definitely relate to that. It just feels like working with AI allows me to get rid of all the boring stuff that I really don't want to do and delegate that, and AI can help me with that. Not everything, of course, but a lot of it. Okay, so I think there's a slide on AI hyper-revolution. You know, we see a lot of very slow adoption of AI across real estate. There are some use cases, but most teams are experimenting with small trials. Maybe there's somebody within a team that is responsible for AI innovation. Most or more ambitious companies would have AI task forces, where they would have people from different parts of the business looking at AI applications. There are some companies that are experimenting with AI IC members or AI board members. I think that's definitely possible when it comes to the technology. When it comes to business organization, I think we are at least a few years away from that, especially the larger organizations. We need a lot of training because there's a huge gap between what people think about AI and what AI actually is. Because AI can actually do very specific things, and I will come back to this on the next slide. But there is no one AI model that can basically solve all your problems. Sometimes you need ChatGPT, sometimes Claude, sometimes Gemini, sometimes Perplexity, and it's really annoying that it's very hard to know which one to use because they all have different capabilities. But actually, as I said, there are very few things that AI at the moment can do extremely well. One thing it can do is can analyze text, it can write, it can sort of analyze websites or PDFs, it can create media, it can write code, but this is a relatively short list of capabilities, right? But that's what an AI can do. It just annoyingly happens that this is what most of us do for a living. And so, in a very short list, you can capture that. But there's also a very short list of mature AI agents that can do a little bit more. So they can do, for example, deep research, they can code, they can do data analysis. So this is AI doing a lot more than just answering a simple question. It's following a workflow, debugging, going through a sequential process of trying to build something that you've requested. But there are very few use cases where we think AI is mature enough to be reliable, but these are the ones that we think are worth recommending. And there is a very, very long list of use cases where AI can do 70% of the work or maybe 80% of the work for you, but then you still need an expert, an experienced, knowledgeable, seasoned person to get from 70 or 80% to 100. Right? And this is exactly what happens, for example, in legal services, where AI can do something that is 90% client ready, but then you need an extremely seasoned, well-trained partner to take it from 95 to 100 before it's client ready. And of course, knowing how to use AI and understanding what it can do and what it can't do and how to use it is a skill. We all need to learn this, and that requires practice and it requires training. Speaking of training, that's something that the company that we set up for with Thomas and Monica does as an sort of online service. We do in-house courses as well. The next course runs in October, so if you have some time, please have a look. I highly recommend that you get some training. Of course, ours is the best, but if for whatever reason you don't want to take our course, there are other courses out there that I think are worth looking into. Either way, I do encourage you to start looking into using AI on a daily basis, not only because you will be more productive, more competitive, but also you will be enjoying your work more. And I don't know how to sell AI better than just say you'd be happier. And on that note, I just want to finish the presentation. If you want the slides, the QR code will allow you to download them. And if you have any questions, you can email me here, and we'll do our best to respond as quickly as we can. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm happy to take questions now.